Well,
everything
like
like that.
Alien Isolation, where they learned your patterns and that kind of stuff, like.
Exactly, yeah. So it was supposed to be that, but someone spelled pecan wrong, and that's why the game turned out.
So, well, then you seem
Um,
to be quite an insider on all this kind of stuff. Can I ask, do you think there is a trend in why the trailers are, like, on a really high bar, and then some of these games don't turn out that way? Do you think, is it like crunch
yeah.
period? Is it just misleading? Like, what do you think are the symptoms of
Um,
that? Like,
Speaking as someone who works within like a medium like games, the trailers, you never do the trailers yourselves. Like the game companies don't do the trailers. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
a separate animator hired to make the trailer. Uh, a lot of times, obviously, not with the visuals of the game,
Mm.
and everything like that. Like it's always like this like gorgeous, amazing thing, like cinematic trailer with like the kind of graphics that we won't see as playable in a game probably till like 2 generations down the line and everything like that. And it's hyped up, and they've spent like half they've spent like probably 10 people's salaries on like a song that everybody knows, and they've tweaked it so that it's cinematic as all hell, to really get you hyped. And of course, like we're saying, Snake Oil Salesman and Randy Pitchford, they'll come out and they'll be like, "Look at this! This is how the game is going to look. We promise." Wink. Do you know what I mean? And
Well,
then
I
like that's
suppose, yeah, because isn't a big part of the game industry those big expos where, they have the designers
yeah,
on stage with the trailers and everyone's in the room and Keanu
and
Reeves comes out and all that malarkey.
yeah, and the next thing you do is like you'll get your Fallout 76s or stuff like that, where it's like a lot of times, like you're as someone who works in there, you're never actually told what's going on in the outside world a lot of the time. Like uh, you see like your boss who you've probably met like once or twice, and they're up on the stage and they're just like, "Oh, it's going to be 4 times as good as the last one. It's going to be 3 times the definition." And you're sitting there going like, he doesn't know what the fuck he's saying. We can't do, what is he saying? Like a lot of the times that's what's going on. It's like someone who either has never worked in that industry or hasn't worked in that industry in a long time. Because I know like there's people like Randy Pitchford who used to be like a really good level designer. He did level designs for like a lot of the old like build engine games like Duke Nukem, Shadow Warrior, and stuff like that. Like he used to care and stuff like that. Or who's the Fallout guy? Because I'm not a big Fallout fan.
No, I'm afraid I haven't played it. I know it by reputation, like, but
Oh, that's gonna bug me. But that guy, he promised the moon and the stars for 76, and he's like, "Oh, it's gonna be 4 times the map size, 15 times the resolution, and everything like that." And like he used to be like a really talented game designer as well. He went to work in Bethesda in the 90s, and he made like 2 really good old Terminator FPSs. And like he was doing stuff in the 90s that like you only get now. Like he was essentially making like the Far Cry games, the modern Far Cry games in the 90s, if you get what I mean.
yeah, I get you.
Big epic grand scale first person shooters in the 90s that were like physically impossible, and you're just thinking like, you guys did all this, you know how it's done, but you've just been probably out of the game so long, and like probably had your head so far up your own asses that you don't actually realize how games are made anymore. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, actually, since you were talking about that, I've got in my head like an imaginary game designer, and one of these executives goes up on the stage and promises it'll be like 3D and 4 times the speed and 5 times the RAM and all this kind of stuff, and they're just like crying because now they have to deliver on it, even though they never like were told to do it. Like that kind of miscommunication.
Yeah.
Like,
oh man, I've been brought on to a show as a character designer, and I'm thinking like, oh, this will be fun. This is like a preschool. This is going to be a preschool show. There's not going to be too much to do in it. And then what I haven't realized is the person who sold this show to sold us to get this show has promised the greatest TV show that's ever like come before. It's like, yeah, it's a preschool show, but it's going to be something that the worst thing ever to hear is it's this show, but it's going to be for everybody, because then it's like,
Oh
great.
no. And it's not even their fault. Like, I mean, it's important obviously to hype up a new thing so people check it out, but like that's
Yeah.
fundamental miscommunication just
Oh yeah.
throws everything off the rails, like.
A lot of times, a lot of issues like this will always come down to a marketing problem.
Right.
Marketing will push this to, because that's their job. They're there to make what you're doing seem like something you want to buy. That is their job, and they have to do their job. But they could like lie less. uh, like I also worked on a show where we were selling toys of the show. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to get blacklisted.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Like
complaining about stuff I've worked on. So I'm going to say this show that I worked on where where there was a toy line in conjunction with it, and like we were like you're trying to make like deadlines and crunch and everything like that, and you're just like, yeah, this character looks good, cool. You'll push it through because you think that actually looks really good and it's going to animate well and everything like that. And then the toy people are like, it doesn't, we think it could look like more dynamic and cool like the toy, right? And you're like, all right, but it's not going to animate well. And you're just like, you guys will figure it out. All right, cool. So you go back and you spend another week trying to get this thing looking like the toy. Like sometimes the toy people will send you concept art as well, which they should never do, because toys and anyway, like name me one cartoon where the fucking toys look like the show.
Yeah, unless it's like a Pokemon situation where the characters, or like Yu-Gi-Oh, where like the cartoon followed the toys in the first place, that kind of thing.
They're inherently based on a toy, but we were coming onto something that there was a toy line already, and there was a show based on that toy line, but this was the sequel show, so there wasn't the toys ready yet. So we were constantly in like a fight with the toy people. And then eventually the toys came out, and I remember feeling like unbelievably disappointed because they looked nothing like the show, nothing like the concept art they'd sent us, and they were like really poorly painted as well.
Oh no!
Being like really angry because I was just like, the amount of arguments I had to have, the amount of times where I was just told to like just do what the toy people want, and like I was like, oh, this is what I get for this, is like like this.
You've got to send me a photo of these things off the air. I'm dying to see. I hate to break up your flow, but we actually only have 7 minutes left, because that's what happens when you can start talking about, I suppose, Randy Pitchford. But I want to ask, you mentioned something really interesting just before we started recording, which is that in these troubled times, you find zombie games really relaxing, like your Resident Evils and that kind of stuff. Why is that?
It's to do with my anxiety and stuff like that. Like I suffer